A little while ago, I wrote an article titled Critical Thinking for the Adaptive Leader. 9 key characteristics to develop, which featured on the Conference Speakers International website. I briefly highlighted 9 characteristics that adaptive leaders adopt to navigate a changing world. Now, for this video, I'm just going to be focusing on the first characteristic in a little bit more detail. Critical thinking and problem solving have consistently been voted as the key skills for leaders to develop in the 21st century. It's becoming increasingly important for leaders to make the right decisions, and that involves a key characteristic of critical thinking. This is adaptive leaders start from the premise that they may be wrong and are open to their minds being changed. I grew up in a fundamental religion where we believed in the absolute authority of its religious text and its founder. The founder of this religion described its religious text as the most correct of any book on earth. Many consider this religion a cult, although, whilst I was part of this religion, that would have been a claim that I would have passionately defended against. As a youngster, fresh out of the military, I then spent another 2 years as a missionary, proselyting door to door to anyone who would listen. I believed passionately in the message. In fact, not only did I believe, but I proclaimed a sure knowledge of the truthfulness of the message that I was teaching. Every single facet of my life was influenced by the teachings of this church. It permeated every aspect of my thinking. Every single life decision that I made was done within the context of the peculiar doctrine of this church. And there was no room for any doubt of any kind. As a member, you are very strongly discouraged from reading any literature that may raise questions about the truth claims which the church makes. And I never questioned. That is until about 15 years ago, when my life was thrown into a little bit of turmoil, because I came across a book that challenges the authenticity of the church's foundational text. A former bishop of the church and a geneticist set out to prove through DNA the truthfulness of some of the major claims made in the book. The problem was, though, is that he didn't find that what he was looking for. In fact, after reviewing the evidence, he had to conclude that the claims were fabricated. Now, this book raised a few questions for me and sparked an almost 3-year obsessive drive to challenge all of the sacred cows that I had. All of the beliefs that were never ever questioned now suddenly became the object of intense scrutiny in my life. Did I really have all the answers to life's complex questions, or hadn't I been asking the right questions in the first place? Did my worldview really contain a fullness of the truth? The proverbial rug began unraveling very quickly from beneath my feet, and I soon discovered that I no longer had a sure knowledge. In fact, in the face of rigorous testing and compelling evidence, all of my sacred cows became indefensible. And so began a process of change and discovery that, upon reflection, became my journey towards a greater sense of self-awareness. Now, the reason I tell you this story is that our leadership culture has for decades focused on persuasion and influence. We celebrate leaders that are decisive, persistent, and unwavering in their convictions. Now, there's no doubt that persuasion and influence are important skills for leaders, but in a world that is changing faster than ever, I believe it is far more important for leaders to be persuadable. The real competitive advantage for leaders now is the ability to change their minds in the face of new information and new circumstances. In a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, leaders need to make good decisions. When we are open to our minds being changed, we use all of the available information, even the stuff that contradicts what we already believe, to make the best possible judgment. Adaptive leaders also recognize that part of the process of adapting to change, or adapting to changing circumstances, that we need to open our minds and change at speed. With the increasing pace of change, the best leaders lean aggressively into these changes and question the status quo. They're not uncomfortable receiving feedback, even if it contradicts beliefs that they have about themselves. This allows them to improve at a more rapid rate than other leaders might. In prevailing leadership culture, we have bought into the myth that leaders who change their minds are flip-floppers or pushovers, and this is simply not true. Adaptive leaders are very clear on the reasons that they have for changing their mind. They don't pander to a certain demographic, but rather they do so because it's the right thing to do. They don't apologize when it's an intelligent decision. The really courageous leaders don't wait for feedback from others before considering a shift in their mindset. They actively look for information and for trends that might threaten their industry or an existing product that they have on the market. It's important to take note here that being open to our mind being changed doesn't mean that we are gullible. Leaders who are open to their mind being changed don't always change their mind. It just means that they have a genuine willingness to change their minds in the face of good evidence. And the key here is in the face of good evidence. Adaptive leaders don't change their minds if they haven't been presented with good reasons to change their mind. So the question that I have for you today is, what are your sacred cows? And are you really willing to kill them? What are the issues in your business and in your personal life that are worth changing your mind on? What are the decisions that you can make today where you stand to make a huge gain by being open to that change?